Today's anime review, we get to cover once again another 70s anime that I should have reviewed that I haven't done before until now. For today's anime review is Voltus 5. Voltus 5 is a 1977 Japanese anime series that was premiered on June 4th, 1977 on the original TV network TV Asahi, which is probably around the same time as Invincible Superman Zambot 3 was probably airing at the time as well. Yes, this anime was produced by Yoshiyuki Tomino, who is known for the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise as well. It only lasted about 40 episodes after March 25th, 1978, around the same time as Invincible Steelman Daitarn 3 and Lupin the Third Red Jacket series and Treasure Island anime was probably airing at the time as well. So, let's review Voltus 5. Yes, this anime had a popularity in the Philippines, which is how probably what Telesuccess Productions had a lot to do with as well. But it was originally aired on TV Asahi back in the 70s. But this probably was probably one of the second installment of the romance trilogy, which includes Chodenji Robot Combattler V and Tosho Daimos. Yes, this anime was directed by Tadao Nagahama. Yes, this is probably a mecha giant robot anime that came out in the 70s as well. Because I thought this was created by Go Nagai, just like Mazinger Z, UFO Robot Grandizer, and Great Mazinger. But no, it's probably how Go Nagai has nothing to do with this. But anyway, so the anime, it tells you the story about how the three Go brothers, Kenichi, Daijiro, and Hiyoshi, and their friends Ippei, Mine, and Megumi Oka, pilot the giant robot Voltes 5 in the battle against the people of the planet Bozan, who are trying to add Earth to their galactic empire. But the Prince of Bozan, Haniel, claims to be the Go Boys' half-brother. He says their father was an alien sent to him many years before. How can they fight their own flesh and blood? Can Earth trust them? And might this point to a way forward for both peoples? That is the real question, probably, of how to expect of what's going on in Voltus 5 as well, probably. Yes, that's how the story goes. I mean, the characters are well drawn, particularly. 70s anime hasn't aged well, because this is what I like about this anime is probably they're trying to fight against the Borzons, which is probably some aliens, probably a giant robot piloted by mecha pilots fighting against the aliens in Voltus 5. And yes, that's probably how it's extremely hasn't aged well to this day, probably, for what Voltus 5 could be, probably. And yes, it's probably way better of how any other anime, how it ages feel, probably. That meant feel your way into a time before anime's popularity in the United States of America, which is a great benchmark for Voltus 5 as well. But it's more popular in the Philippines, probably, because if you grew up in the Philippines back in the 70s, like if you watched old anime, you probably want to know something about Voltus 5 as well. Yep. This is lots of fun. And yes, there are some actors that were on originally Urusei Yatsura in D'Artagnan and the Three Muskehounds, probably, such as the voice actors like Tessho Genda and Noriko Ohara, that are probably in Voltus 5. Oh, Noriko Ohara is also in, I believe, Captain Harlock as well. Forgot to mention that. So, anyway, the thing about Voltus 5 has brought to my thing is that when it comes to 70s giant robot anime, probably, because it's growing a popularity of how. And yes, it was also released on VHS by High Tops Video in the United States of America during either the 90s or 80s, when it was first released on home video. And yes, it's probably one of the first anime titles being released on home video during the 80s as well. If you're looking for Voltus 5 in a video store, probably. But that is the serious thing about it. For what they did up to that moment. Ever called about how Voltus 5 had a lot for it, probably. Yep, because this series only encapsulated only about 50 episodes as well. Because it's probably of how a lot of more fun for this as well. That it's basically some type of aliens in Voltus 5. They're called the Boazonians, the ones probably of how the Bozonian invasion has probably a lot how it's happened in Voltus 5 as well. which is probably the most shocking thing, is that because this how the names that are different and very similar for what Voltus 5 had a lot to do with as well. And yeah, because you can't go wrong with this anime. I mean, I'm trying to give it in the point probably as how to explain about Voltus 5. And yeah, it's probably one of the most influential anime from the 70s next to Mobile Suit Gundam and many other and Space Battleship Yamato as well. Before there was many other popular animes that everybody knows about later on after the 70s and 80s and as well as the 90s. Yet some time has gone before anime went mainstream with those newer titles. But that's not what I'm explaining about. But Voltus 5, on the other hand, however, this is a well-suburb anime as well. Because it's probably dividates from the robotic design of the Combattler V, which is probably more serious than Combattler V's comedic storyline as well. The plotline difference between Combattler V is more comedic as well, but for Voltus 5 is probably the more serious plot, probably, in the difference between for that. Well, that is the question of how the difference can it be for Voltus 5 as well. Yeah. But it's just how it is as well. Exactly it, probably. For somehow, this is probably how it became one of the most influential anime series in the 70s as well. I mean, if you ever loved 70s anime, you probably want to check out Voltus 5 as well, probably. I mean, without Voltus 5, then anime would never be the same in the 70s as well. Yeah, that is what you call of how it's more influential as well. And yes, there are some English dubs on Voltus 5, because I have a feeling, basically, that their names have been changes, probably, that are the most expected thing, probably, in the whole aesthetic ways. I mean, that's probably of how, in terms of how Voltus 5 had a lot to do with. And yeah, it was probably aired on Tele Success Productions on the Philippines Channel Network in the 70s, when they were acquiring the rights from TV Asahi, when Voltus 5 became a popular anime household name in both Japan and the Philippines, probably because, ironically, because it's more popular than most other anime, which ironically, because it's probably how they were replacing Combattler V, which ironically, Combattler Chodenji Robo Combattler V5 is probably the more different anime, which is probably how it's more different than Voltus 5. But anyway, Voltus 5, however, yeah, that's probably how it's becoming a household name in Japan during the 70s in the Japanese public eye when it comes to 70s anime as well. And yes, Voltus 5 has they made it into like a movie version of it, where they use combining all 40 episodes of the original Voltus 5 anime series. They wanted to hawk it as like an anime compilation film as well, when it has its English dub as well. That's probably how it is as well. Somehow, Voltus 5 has probably of how it's got another compilated anime movie where they use all 40 episodes they wanted to make as like a movie, like a anime compilation type movie, where they used episodes from how they edited episodes from the original series as well. Unlike many other ones in general, when it was probably having a household thing for this particular anime movie, as from what I learned, the fact is that Voltus 5 is probably how it's gotten as a compilated movie, as a movie adaptation, probably, because they had a lot to do, probably, has brought to my attention as well. For if you're watching either in the both similar ways of how you're watching Voltus 5, either the original anime television series or the anime movie version as well, which is basically not like it's a feature-length movie. No, it's basically like a compilation movie where they used episodes from the series, probably. And yes, it had an English dub, probably, as well. Because there is which is basically known as Voltus 5, the movie, where they used an English dub, probably, as well. Because that is of how they had a lot to do with as well. And there's also Voltes 5 Legacy, which is the upcoming live-action television series in the Philippines, what I heard. Which is just how it is as well. That's the thing. And yeah, it had an English dub for Voltes 5 anime movie, as from what I heard. Yep, because that's just how it is as well. And yes, but it did got an English dub for that, as well. It has the original Japanese music on here for what Voltes 5 had, probably has the dubs on there. Both Phil has the American English dub in the 80s, as well as the Filipino English dub, which is probably in the Philippines back in the 80s, probably for what Voltes 5 had a lot to do, especially for 2 English dubs. Voltes 5 is probably how they Toei company, how they edited all 40 episodes as a anime compilation movie with the English dub, which is probably done by the company 3B Productions under the English dub for Mazinger Z as Transor Z as well. For overall, I consider this anime to be a well-known series. The characters are great, the story is awesome. I gave this anime 5 out of 5 as well. So that's going to be it for my anime review on Voltes 5 for today. Thank you for watching, but before we go, here's my thoughts for this. When I first watched Voltes 5, because I really was overwhelmed, because it was bombastically pure badass as well. 70s anime hasn't aged well because it's at its best as well.